Hello, my name is James Gallagher. I'll be going over Cryptococcosis today. So what is Cryptococcosis? It's an infectious disease that you find all over the world with a variety of clinical manifestations. The two main species that I'll be going over today are Cryptococcus neoformans and Cryptococcus gautii. It's a fungal pathogen that is a encapsulated yeast, as you see on the right. It's found in non-living reservoirs, so primarily it's found in soil. It can spread to different areas through bird droppings, and it's found in decaying trees and in tree bark. Pathogenesis. It is an airborne transmission, so you're either going to inhale a dust or dirt particle that has one of the gautii or neoformans cells in it, or you're going to inhale one of the spores. And as it makes its way into your lungs through the respiratory tract, your dendritic cells are going to call over T cells and with the cytokines to call over a T helper cell to induce the inflammation. And generally this is enough to actually manage the infection. But the virulence factor of the capsule, which contains GXM, allows the encapsulated yeast to become a latent infection. So what the capsule essentially does is it gives a very thick wall to a very small cell, and this allows it to grow within the macrophage or the phagocyte. And the melanin pigment actually helps it resist oxidative stress by absorbing some of the oxygen radicals. And you can see on the right, the part of the life cycle is that it goes into your lungs and makes its way into your blood. The mechanism through which it crosses the blood-brain barrier is not known, but it does cross it. So who's at risk? It's anyone who has a compromised immune system. So whether you've had an organ transplant or chemotherapy or HIV/AIDS, or it's just your medication, it not only affects people, it also affects animals, but there's no transmission from person to person or animal to person. And one of the notable exception to the being immunocompromised is actually gautii. It basically doesn't need you to be immunocompromised. You can be very healthy and it'll still establish its latent infection, and it'll just sit and wait until you are just a little bit immunocompromised, and then it'll cross that barrier. So some of the symptoms. A lot of the times it's asymptomatic, and that's again largely because your immune system can manage it. But then as soon as you become a little bit immunocompromised, you may see the symptoms appear as early as 2 weeks or as late as 3 years after inhaling it. But typically it's around 6 to 7 months before you start seeing symptoms. So it starts off in your lungs, it affects your lungs, and you get a cough, shortness of breath, chest pain, fever, and then it'll cross that blood-brain barrier, and then you develop something called cryptococcal meningitis. You'll have a headache, fever, neck pain, nausea, vomiting, sensitivity to light, confusion, or changes in behavior. And then from there, it's just free to disseminate. And you can get it in your skin, basically anywhere, from like your face and your hands. And you can even get it in your eyes, and that will make you go blind. Incidence and prevalence. So it is a worldwide disease. There's 1 million cases each year with approximately 625,000 deaths. In the US, it's a very rare disease. So that's we get around 0.4 to 1.3 cases per 100,000. And then in the AIDS population, we see around 2 to 7 cases per 100,000 people and a ratio of 12% for fatalities. Now, we used to think that Cryptococcus gatti was only constrained to tropical or subtropical climates. However, the Pacific Northwest outbreak was exclusively Cryptococcus gatti. And in 1999, Canada had 200 cases that they believe started in Vancouver Island. And then in 2004 and 2004 to 2010, the US actually had 60 cases. There was only one person who was able to confirm that they traveled through Vancouver Island, so they don't really suspect any links there, besides the fact that it was Cryptococcus gatti, and most of the cases were in Oregon, and then there were a lot fewer cases in California, Hawaii, and I think there was one in Idaho as well. And now cryptococcal meningitis, on the other hand, is a very big problem in sub-Saharan Africa. It makes up 15% of all AIDS-related deaths globally, and 3/4 of those are in sub-Saharan Africa. It's actually overtaken tuberculosis in terms of complications with AIDS, I believe. So how do we diagnose? So one of the ways that the ways we still do it today is actually through growing a culture from a tissue sample or bodily fluid, and then you just put it underneath a microscope and you look. Now this is really good at telling you whether you have something in the Cryptococcus genus, but doesn't actually tell you what species. And to figure that out, you'd have to do an additional test by growing them on a CGB agar. The blue meaning it's Cryptococcus gatti, and the yellow-green is the regular color of the medium. That's going to be your Cryptococcus neoformans. We also have used antigen tests, which where they are available in the world. So treatment. We have 2 oral drugs currently. That is flucytosine and fluconazole, both of which are used to treat asymptomatic cases all the way up to moderate cases of cryptococcosis. And generally you're on it for a long time, for around 6 months. And for more serious cases, you will take a regimen of intravenous medication. That would be amphotericin B, which is only administered in hospitals. And that would be in addition to taking your oral medication, whatever they prescribe you. Generally, you're on the amphotericin B for a week, and then an additional 6 months with the oral medication, generally taken at your house. In very serious cases, a lumbar puncture is used to relieve pressure on your brain, and surgery is used to remove the growths that are too large. And on the right is one of the campaign posters from the World Health Organization to combat cryptococcal meningitis. Excuse me. For the future. So largely research is looking to find new drugs or repurpose existing drugs to combat cryptococcal meningitis primarily, and then they're going to go around and also develop new drugs for the regular Cryptococcus. Cryptococcosis. So immunotherapy and monoclonal antibodies and vaccines have been proven to work in mice. However, I haven't found any articles saying that they've moved on beyond mice models. And in terms of prevention, they are looking to make a membrane used to filter out the encapsulated yeast, but that is definitely a more novel technique. It's very hard to prevent this, especially because it's just found in the soil, and it's through the air. So you go outside, you probably have inhaled a little bit. So one program that's been very successful is the Diflucan Partnership Program, which began in 2000. It's a program that provides free fluconazole to developing countries. And back in 2010, they had donated $1.2 billion worth of medication. And as of 2010, they had 2,400 sites in 63 countries in Africa, Asia, the Caribbean, and Latin America. So WHO is continuing to look for a more effective drug regimen to combat cryptococcal meningitis. So originally, it was a 2-week regimen of amphotericin B and flucytosine. And in 2018, they reduced it to 1 week, and that ended up reducing mortality by 38% and the risk of anemia by 69%, which is one of the more common complications that they would have when treating someone. So I hope you all learned something, and I look forward to trying to answer your questions on Tuesday. Here are my sources. Oh, well, they're my sources. Thank you. Bye.